So I wanted to do a little unboxing on this one because it is a lot different than the early Touareg lift kits. Comes with a nice forged Motorsport Overland sticker. The rear pucks are shaped a lot differently. They fit the OEM suspension a lot better. We did learn in this video, you'll see later, that it does not fit aftermarket Bilstein. The front suspension goes over the spring under the top cap, so it does have holes for supplied bolts to go through. It makes it a lot easier to install as well. You don't have to compress the spring nearly as much. Alright, today we're back with the 2012 Touareg. We're installing the forged Motorsports Overland Series 2-inch suspension lift on this. Just wanted to get a few quick measurements. The wheel well measures just over 32, about 32 3/8 of an inch at the top. Yeah, 68 and a half. That's a good number. First step for the rear is to take the rear cover off. To do that, just lift it towards you and then pull it towards the rear of the vehicle, and it slides right off. Remove these bolts, T30s, and then under that is a couple more T30s that you'll have to remove to gain access. Once you removed that, that gives you access to that bolt right there. Now we're back under it and just took the nut off of the bottom bolt. They're over here. And then we'll get that out of there and see how it comes out. So far this has been a little bit easier than the early Touareg. I don't think lining it up is going to be any easier, but at least we didn't have to drop the rear subframe. The assembly comes out pretty easy once you remove that bottom bolt. So now remove this top cap. It's just 4 13mm nuts, and then this comes right off. Now we have to compress the spring so that we can take that top bolt off. This bolt. The initial plan on this Touareg was to upgrade the rear shocks to Bilsteins, but they're not quite shaped properly. So the forged Motorsports Overland Series the spacer does not fit in the Bilstein shocks. So unfortunately, we're going to continue to use the OEMs. But that's quite the unfortunate learning experience on that one. There it is in. It's definitely a little tricky, especially with my cheap spring compressors, but it worked. So far I got the bolts secured up top in the rear. That kept it from wiggling around on me. And then over here, the lower strut mount just has to meet up with the control arm, and it's going to make it. It's just a little tight. I put this long piece of wood in here, and I'm going to wedge that here and pull it down, and it'll meet up with it. It's just going to take some effort and maybe another person just to get that in there properly. But so far I am liking this one a whole lot better than the early Touaregs. This is a lot easier so far. I've seen some posts that people say that they can't compress the springs enough to get the spacers in. You can, even with the cheap Harbor Freight spring compressors. You got to go all the way, but you can get them compressed. I'm not saying this is the exact safest way to do it, but it does work and you can get them. So far I got this side all disassembled except for the top. Everything came out really good. I took the sway bar end link completely out. It made it easier to get this top nut and bolt out of the shock assembly. So this was incredibly difficult to get out. I happened to have a nut in the barn that I didn't mind completely ruining, which I did to hammer that out. If you don't have that, I don't know of a good way to do that without completely ruining that ball joint. So this should be about ready to come out. Just waiting on, I'll do the other side, then I'll lower it down and remove the bolts up top. So far it looks like I just have to take the diesel filter out of the way to access the bolts for the top of the strut assembly. I didn't have to remove any of the lines. I just removed two 10mm bolts that were holding it in place, and it comes right out. After I removed the fuel filter, I removed the bracket that held on the fuel filter. This was just another 10mm bolt and two 10mm nuts. And that gives full access to the three nuts holding on the, that gives full access to the three nuts holding on the strut assembly. So now that I got to the bottom of the car again to see what I have to get around, I disconnected all of the cables so that I had a clear path for the shock to come through. And now it should come out. See if it actually does. Just like that. Easy, easy. Quick tip, if you're going to work on Volkswagens at all, grab one of these kits, these pick kits from Harbor Freight. They make taking these plugs out very easy. I know there's a specific tool for it, but these work very well, and you don't break them anymore. You break less of them. There we go. So there are the shocks, struts. There they are in their stock form. All right, after you get the top off, I'm just going to take this out and this out, and you got to get these studs out. Replace them with the ones that came in the kit. Just like that. Alright, the lift is on and complete. Everything took a lot more prying to get it in than expected, but works fine. Drove it back and forth a little bit, no clicking. Just needs an alignment now and it should be all set. So overall lift on the wheel arch is, the overall height rather, is 34 and just about 3/8 inch. And the overall height of the vehicle is definitely taller. Gee whiz. About 70 inches, looks like, just what I can tell from my eyes. Looks great, can't wait for him to get the Alpha equipped wheels on it. That's going to look like a great off-road vehicle.